Scottsdale Living, it's election season. So we're going to do some amazing podcasts over the next couple months. And one of my favorite people here in the whole city of Scottsdale is the sitting city council member, Tammy Caputi. Your first term, right?
Yep, fourth year, first term. Here we go, fourth year,
first term, and we're coming up on the next term. So you're running right now, right?
I'm always running, John. I don't think I ever stopped running. I tell people this all the time. Got elected in 2020, and you know what? Every day is election day. So it just keeps going.
And you know what? I feel like the city is really behind you because you've been just electric and magnetic at the, the amount of money you've been able to raise and the support that you've had. And I mean, to me, that's an indicator of like, hey, these people want to see Tammy in office, so you got to feel pretty good about the campaign that you're running so far.
I do. I feel wonderful. Again, I think every day is election day. And I think a lot of candidates make that mistake of getting elected and then saying, we'll worry about it in 4 years. But you've got to keep going. You've got to keep reaching out to the community, making sure they know who we are. And again, supporting. I'm very, very proud of my wide, deep community support.
Love it.
Residents, business owners, hundreds of occupations, many, many different employers, different people from all over the city. Super proud of that.
I know, it's fantastic to see. And so tell us, one thing that I love that you're doing, right, is I've always thought this was really important to get out into the community to talk to everybody. So you're doing, is it Coffee with Tammy or what's the name?
It's Coffee with Caputi.
Coffee with Caputi.
It's got a really nice ring.
I love that. Totally. So what is that? I mean, you're meeting up at random coffee houses throughout the city and just inviting the public to chat, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to be very strategic about not just where we're located. So revolving in different neighborhoods all over the city, but also making sure that we only have them in locally owned businesses.
Yeah. So we're not doing Starbucks.
Exactly. I'm a small business owner myself. And if I can bring the business to that small business owner for the morning, then it's,
it's a win-win. Totally.
Exactly. Checking a lot of different boxes and people are very grateful. But the wonderful thing about revolving around the city, we have a very large geographic city here. And people have a tendency.
27 miles tip to tip or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a little over 30 actually. Oh, wow. I should have beefed up on my exact demographics stats, there. But I think it's 35 miles long. Everyone in the different neighborhoods have often slightly different concerns. And I think people really appreciate too, knowing that I'm going to be in a certain spot on a certain date and that they can get before me and not just have an email exchange or even a phone call, but an actual face-to-face, which makes all the difference.
It is, and it's fantastic because I kind of feel like outside of being out in the public and doing the kind of things that you're doing, it's really hard for a city council member to kind of get their pulse on what's happening, right? Because, especially in Scottsdale, because it's not geographically divided. So, I mean, you represent the whole city. And obviously, South Scottsdale to North Scottsdale, those are totally different interests of what people are looking for, right? So it's great to talk to everybody.
It's the best thing about campaigning too, as weird as that sounds. Right now we're all tasked with getting 1,000 signatures from Scottsdale voters. And so everybody complains about the process because it's difficult. But it's wonderful to be forced to get out and have these conversations.
Shaking hands and kissing babies, right?
Exactly, because it's sort of informal and inexpensive polling, which is also what I'm trying to do with the coffees. What are people thinking about? What is top of mind in the different areas? And I can tell you that after doing this now for, I think it's almost 2 years that we've been doing these coffees, the vast majority of people who live in Scottsdale are happy. And I'm going to repeat that for a minute because we hear so much from people.
So much negativity.
Yes. And so you get in this mode of, oh, it's awful. Things aren't that great. But I think other than, obviously that not everything is perfect and it's important to listen to everyone, but we have to make sure that we don't overweight the negative voices. People pay a premium to live in the city of Scottsdale. And they do that for a reason. It's because we are the gold standard of the Valley. We are an amazing aspirational city. We have a formula, a winning formula that works, right? We've got the most open space, the highest amenities, the strongest property values and the lowest property taxes.
And Wallet Hub is what, the number one job creation place in the country now?
Number one place to find a job is the city of Scottsdale.
And the great thing about that is, like, we're not bringing in jobs, or you guys as a city council and the city as a whole, not bringing in jobs that are like, minimum wage. I mean, these are tech jobs. They're high tech and good paying careers.
These are great jobs. Yeah. And again, this is how we maintain our winning formula in Scottsdale.
Totally. I love it.
It's the economic vibrancy and vitality that allows us to have this wonderful sales tax base, so that our property taxes are very low, right? We're all blessed by being able to take advantage of this wonderful, vibrant economy, and yet still have residential neighborhoods that are low scale and safe and beautiful and away from the hubbub. It's the best of all worlds.
So let's chat about that. I mean, you've got job creation, so
I gave you the
people
perfect
coming.
segue,
I know.
didn't I?
You teed it up for me. I love that. So we've got job creation, which means we've got more people moving to the city. So where are we putting them? I mean, we absolutely have a bit of a housing issue. It's not a crisis by any stretch of the imagination, but affordable housing is kind of hard in Scottsdale.
Yep.
So what is the council in our city doing as a whole to kind of address that issue?
You actually brought up so many sub items in that one sentence. I'm going to have to unpack it a little bit. But first of all, I want to push back on this idea that we are growing uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Scottsdale often sees a lot of moments of surge when we have things like the Open or Barrett Jackson special event season. There's a lot of folks here, but in general, our population has increased 1% per year over the last decade.
Wow. So that's not much at all. Yeah.
We are growing very slowly, very carefully. I hear a lot from people, not everyone should live in Scottsdale. And that's true. Not everyone does live in Scottsdale. It's not readily available for absolutely everyone. So we are growing very carefully, very slowly, in line with our general plan and all of our other city plans, and really keeping a good handle on the growth. We are being incredibly thoughtful about where it goes. So where are we putting people? Right? We have 3 growth areas, and that's where we concentrate the business activity. McDowell Road corridor along where Sky Song is, the Air Park, which you and I talked about a little bit, and in our downtown area. Those are our growth areas. That's where we concentrate most of the activity that's going on. Other than that, we're trying to keep our residential neighborhoods the way we love them. The city is basically all built out at this point. We are doing redevelopment and reinvestment projects just because you have to keep reinvesting to stay beautiful and relevant, right? So,
and it's vibrant. I absolutely love the city of Scottsdale. And you're right, it's hard right now. Not hard. I mean, we just don't have a ton of open space, right? So it's infill and it's a lot of projects like that. An interesting number that kind of comes to mind is, if I'm correct, I think the council as a whole has approved like 6 projects in the last year. Is that right?
It's 6 or 7. Just a little more than a handful of projects in the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. But like so go to our neighbors to the south, go to Mesa. They're approving that many projects in a day.
One council meeting.
Yeah. So the idea that there's this crazy amount of growth happening that's uncontrolled, it's just not real, right?
And in a city like Mesa or Chandler or Gilbert, they're going out and looking for projects. They're inviting folks into their city, showing them, here's a dirt lot. What do you got for us? Actively seeking it. In Scottsdale, it's actually the other way around.
Yeah, they're coming to us, right?
What I'm saying is we're saying, it's not necessarily that they're coming to us. We're being unbelievably careful. We're not going out and asking. We're waiting for folks to come to us and being super picky about what we get.
So, I mean, the interesting thing is once something gets to the council, it's pretty much buttoned down. I mean, it's gone through the checks and balances and everything that's in place. So it's not like you guys are being presented with hundreds of projects every day. I mean, there's a process that it has to go through. So when it finally gets to that city council vote, that's gone through everything that the city has in place to make sure that it's buttoned down, right?
So there's 2 points to make on that. I'm going to wrap this back to the question about affordable housing. So the reason it's extremely difficult to build affordable in the city of Scottsdale is exactly that. We have one of the strictest processes of
Sure.
approving something in our city. So it can take 2 to 3 years
Right.
from the time a project gets brought to us to work its way through all of the scrubbing it's going to go through at just the city staff level alone.
Sure.
And then back and forth in conversation with different council members. The owners of the projects will come to us for feedback along the way. We're constantly saying, here's how the project could be better. This is what we're going to need to move it forward. Then it goes before our development review board. It goes before our planning commission. It goes out to neighborhood hearings.
Sure.
I mean, this process is incredibly long, and we're continually renegotiating and making the project better and better as it goes along.
Sure.
By the time it comes before us in a council meeting, we've often been looking at it for years.
Right.
So it's just about ready to go. I mean, people have this idea of, you vote for most of the things you see. They don't see that so many of the projects fall out long before it gets before us on council. But the reason it's very hard to get an affordable project is exactly this.
Sure.
I mean, we've got an incredibly stringent checklist of things that are required to move forward.
And it's everything, right? It's from water usage to electricity to green space, the whole deal.
Extra parking.
Yeah.
Underground parking, green building, the best possible architecture, the least density, the least height. The checkbox goes on and on and on.
Right.
We like people to be able to show that they're being efficient with their water usage. We want additional improvements to the roadways.
Sure.
We're going to definitely exact development to pay for infrastructure that gets affected by them coming in. So there's just an awful lot of costs here. Land is incredibly expensive in the city of Scottsdale, upwards of $1 million an acre at this point. So it's really hard to get something to pencil out with affordability. And, affordable housing is all about political will.
Yeah.
You can't push up it. People say they want it.
Right.
But when we bring them projects that might fulfill that, it's a hard no. So
there's a balance there, right?
Yeah,
I mean, what's affordable also. That's
true.
It's an open number depending on who you are or what you live.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to provide some workforce housing. Yeah. So again, we're the number one place for jobs.
Yeah.
Where do we put these people?
Sure.
80% of our workforce at this point is commuting in and out of the city every day.
Yeah.
That's your traffic.
Right. Yeah. And that's the reverse of the idea that Scottsdale's like a bedroom community. Because I mean, now it's not. They're coming here to work and then going back to their house, right?
I told you my line, Scottsdale runs on business activity, not bedroom activity.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's how we keep our golden formula.
Sure. So share with us a few of your highlights. So, I mean, you're 3.5 years in. What are some of the things that you feel were your best accomplishments and you're most proud of?
Sure. So I ran for office because I wanted to be a pro-education, pro-business voice on the city council.
Sure.
Positive, forward thinking. I say that a lot. Over the last 3.5 years, we managed to do actually some really cool things in terms of education, which is counterintuitive because the city council is not part of the school board, of course. But I came in feeling very strongly that the relationship between the council and the schools should and could be better. Property values are directly impacted by the quality of our schools. So we've worked really hard to improve that relationship. I got an education element included as a standalone chapter to our general plan, which was voter approved.
The first one in a long time, right?
It had been a lot of years. We moved that forward and everyone's very proud of it. Again, standalone education chapter, which I think there's only 2 other cities in the entire country that have that. And again, it's on paper, but it's giving a message that we value education.
Right.
We started an education subcommittee between the city and the schools. So we had Scottsdale Community College, Scottsdale Unified School District, and the city of Scottsdale sitting together once a quarter, coming up with ways in which we could have mutual benefit between the city and the schools. And we've actually launched a couple of amazing initiatives already from that. Internship programs that put those 3 different players together, and just some really cool ways in which we can share resources and have economies of scale between the different entities.
Sure.
Super proud about that.
Yeah.
And again, as you mentioned, we created jobs. I think 10 or 12% increase in the
Which
number
is
of high-paying jobs
right?
in the city of Scottsdale.
Yeah.
We've kept our property values are at an all-time high.
They are.
Property taxes are remaining incredibly low. We've had balanced budgets. We have...
But Tammy, you're killing me, because if you go on social media, it's all doom and gloom, right? I mean, we're falling apart. It's like...
We've added 80 lane miles of roadway.
Yeah.
We've made the city so much more wonderful in so many ways. And you're right. We've done some incredible things in terms of water sustainability. We're working on a sustainability plan in general for the city, trying to make sure that we move forward with an eye towards conserving our resources and putting them, to the best use.
We're really good with water, right? I mean, the city of Scottsdale is I think, renowned internationally for the way we handle water, right?
Yeah, we have one of the most sophisticated water treatment facilities in the country.
So cool.
Yep, we are setting the standard. We are actually using less water today in the city of Scottsdale with the additional population we've seen than we did decades ago.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, we're being super thoughtful about it. We live in the desert.
Yeah.
We need to consider it.
100%. So let's go. One of my favorite things about Scottsdale City Council, probably two, and we talked about one already, that it's not geographically divided, but it's a nonpartisan group, right? So the world right now, the election coming up is definitely partisan. I mean, there's really hard lines drawn. But I feel like for the city, it's really important to have that. I mean, how much are you able to get accomplished? Because it's not like clear red, blue lines drawn, but it's people working together for an ideology versus, hard lines in the sand. And how do we continue that going forward?
How do we continue it? We make sure that we elect folks who do not have a far right or far left agenda.
Yeah.
I think the residents...
The middle is where most people are at and want to be, right?
I agree. The citizens of Scottsdale have decided forever since our inception that we want the city council to remain nonpartisan.
Right.
I think Mayor Drinkwater said potholes are not Republican or Democrat, although almost everything is now becoming partisan. People are actually arguing for the most basic of issues and skewing them with partisanship. And I think that does a real disservice to our city.
Especially at the city level, totally.
It's, we're trying to move the city forward in a positive direction. And when people start to try to pull in national politics and fight for issues based on a certain agenda, rather than looking at our city as a whole, it's divisive and it's dangerous, because then we're not looking at it through a lens of what's best for all 240,000 residents of this city.
Sure.
So, I mean, I would just encourage people to vote all the way down your ballot.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're voting not just for the top, but all the way down to city council and school board races, and to really look at candidates, at least at the local level. Please put partisanship aside and think about the people who are focused on the future of this city.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball.
Sure.
And I don't envy in this, but I mean, the city of Scottsdale has amazing access to outdoors. I mean, great hiking. We've got the preserve. We've got all this stuff, but there's such a vibrant culture as well between dining and shopping and the river and all that kind of stuff. So what's the process on council, like in your mind, when you're looking at things? How do you segment that to keep the best of both worlds? That's a tough one, huh?
I know. I'm not sure how to attack that question. I need like a follow-up.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at new projects coming to town. Let's say the park development, right? Which is George Kurtz's up on Scottsdale Road. There's people out there that are like, well, that should be a park, right? It doesn't make sense to me because it's Scottsdale Road. It's not a park, it's where stuff's at. But I mean, how do you maintain the balance between continuing to develop the city, continuing to bring in business, but also making sure that we still have our green space and, livability outdoors?
It is. It's all about balance. I mean, you just hit it. So the city of Scottsdale is 40% open space. And again, I'm going to repeat that. Yeah. Our city is 40% open space. Right? And that's because we do care very passionately about keeping our green areas and keeping open space. So not only do we have 30,000 acres set aside into preserve land in perpetuity, but on every project, we also require large amounts of open space. Yeah. We have this natural area open space requirement. I mean, great example. I live in North Scottsdale. I have an acre, but I can't use most of it.
Right. Yeah. There's a footprint, right?
Which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
But you're not allowed to do anything in the natural area open space. And we make sure that all of our projects have enough open space.
Sure.
So that we're not just building everywhere. We're being incredibly thoughtful. And the park is actually a great example. It's almost a textbook example.
Yeah.
Because again, you're right. We've got this spot right on Scottsdale Road, just south of a major shopping center, Kierland and Scottsdale Quarter, although Kierland is Phoenix.
Yeah.
That project is going to be a mixed-use development.
Right.
You'll have high-tech, high-paying jobs, high-end hotel, high-end residences, high-end retail, but you'll also have a huge amount of publicly accessible open space, which is how they got their name.
With
park.
walking trails and everything through it, right? Yeah.
So thoughtful. Even the parking garage is going to have a hiking ramp to get up to the second level instead of stairs.
So cool. Yeah, so cool.
Big picture, thinking outside of the box. That's what has made Scottsdale so successful in the past. And that is what's going to keep us being successful in the future.
Totally agree. So we're going to jump around to another topic, which is like, it's been a hot button for a long time. So short-term rentals in the city of Scottsdale, it's just been an issue. And I mean, last time I checked, there was on Airbnb, there was about 7,000 and there's not that many licensed in the city.
Yeah.
So there's a couple out there that aren't following the rules.
Right.
I mean,
because we've got between 4,000 and 5,000 licensed.
Yeah. And so there's a few people out there cheating. So if you're cheating, you better get in line. But, how's that process going? Because I know the city did some big things and, they addressed some of the concerns. I think there's still some people that have some concerns, but it seems to have gotten a lot better.
Like anything else, we get the same complaints from the same small group.
Sure.
So there's definitely a couple of bad actors that sort of
really push that agenda.
They do. It's short-term rentals are a real thorn in the city side. I mean, if we could get rid of them altogether, maybe, I don't know if it's politically correct or not to say this, but we probably would.
Sure.
We just can't because the state legislature has made it illegal for us to ban short-term rentals. And for a long time, we actually could barely even manage them without getting in trouble. Recently, we've had some legislation passed that's freed up our ability to be able to do some degree of managing it.
Sure.
So we can require people to be licensed now. We have a fine schedule when people are doing things that are outside of what's allowed.
That fine goes right to the owner, right? That's like an accountability portion to it.
It's great. It's punishing and it's definitely starting to curb some of the worst of the bad behavior.
Sure.
We have assigned an entire unit in Scottsdale Police Department to oversee the short-term rentals now. And we've elevated it so that it's sort of a priority call at this point. And we're really starting to crack down on these bad actors.
Right.
The city staff has done an amazing job. And, only good things can keep coming. There's a couple of new pieces of legislation right now before the state.
Right.
We're trying to decrease the density for one thing so that you can't have an entire neighborhood taken over by short-term rentals.
Totally makes sense.
Horrible.
Yeah, because right now that doesn't exist, right? I mean, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row.
And that tends to happen. They congregate in certain areas, and that really degrades a neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Neighborhoods are for the neighbors. They're not hotels.
Yeah,
so
no doubt.
Nobody wants to live next door to a party house.
Sure. So share a little bit with us the budget. So, I mean, our most recent budget was $2.4 billion.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a way bigger budget than it even was when you came in.
True.
So how are you guys attacking that? How do you feel about, saving some money for the nest egg kind of thing? And what's the big capital improvements that you see coming up in the city?
We're really proud of our budgets in Scottsdale. We win awards every year. So kind of amazing. We are in a really good cash position right now in the city of Scottsdale. Coming off of COVID, there was a lot of extra.
There was some people were nervous, right? It was scary.
It was. But we're in a wonderful position because there was a lot of extra liquidity.
Sure.
Combination of government programs that were trying to make sure people had, the ability to keep moving forward. And then that post-COVID sort of surge of people spending.
Yeah.
So in true Scottsdale fashion, we are very conservative. We increased our cash reserves. We're requiring almost 25% of a reserve at this point. Right. So in a really good position. We were also able to pay down some of the public safety pensions, and things are in a wonderful position. Of course, now we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
So things are good. We're in a great place, but now always the future is uncertain. So how do we do the best things going forward, making sure that we have enough cash to do the great things? You mentioned the capital improvement projects. One thing that I hear a lot about, we had the 2019 bond program. There's a lot of talk about, oh my gosh, those bond programs, they ran over budget.
Right.
Just want to set the record straight a little bit on that bond program. The bonds were all estimated in 2018.
Sure.
If anyone hasn't been around lately, they understand that.
Right.
The whole world collapsed soon after, and then inflation went wild, and there were labor shortages and supply shortages, and all sorts of chaos. So we've had to refigure a lot of those programs now that they're actually starting to be rolled out for real. But luckily, the city of Scottsdale is in such a wonderful and strong position that even the projects that had shortfalls, we are able to make up with general fund dollars. So we're still able to roll out most of these projects. And the other fallacy that's out there is this idea that we would do every single one of those hundreds of projects all at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
You can't issue debt in a gigantic chunk like that, or you would throw the secondary property tax rate way out of line.
Sure.
We need to keep that flat. That's what we promised the voters. So we're rolling out the projects in terms of priority. They will all get done.
Yeah. It's going to take time, and that makes total sense, right?
Right. I mean, sometimes the critical projects like public safety need to come before the dog parks, but everything gets done all in good time.
Sure. So this next one, I don't know that the city council has a say on it, but I'd love to get your take on it.
Sure.
So maybe one of the crown jewels of Scottsdale is the Waste Management Open.
Yep.
So this year's Waste Management Open was a little bit different than in years past. It's always been crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been fun. It's always been a little over the top. It's the People's Open, the greatest show on grass, all that kind of stuff, right? But this year was off the hook. So, I mean, what's your take on how that's going to affect future Waste Management Opens, and what kind of changes do you think they're going to be implemented, if you have any idea of that?
I think the Waste Management Phoenix Open is one of the most amazing events that we have. And as everyone knows, it's successful every single year.
Hundreds of millions of dollars by the Thunderbirds, right?
Huge contribution, not just to the city coffers, but to all sorts of...
And people forget that, that it's not, it's craziness, sure, but that's hundreds of millions of dollars going back into the community.
Right, exactly, back into the community. So yes, this year got a little out of control.
Yeah.
It was one of those perfect storms, no pun intended.
Yeah, with the weather and the whole deal. Yeah, totally.
So, they'll learn from their mistakes, and they will do things differently next year, I'm sure. But I've heard from some folks who are, oh my gosh, we need to stop doing the Open.
Yeah, come on.
I mean, that's a little bit of over adjustment. I think, again, learn from your mistakes and move on.
Sure.
I was there Friday and Saturday. Yes, it got a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Should we shut the entire event down because, it didn't pull off perfectly? That's a bit of over extreme. I think they'll dial it back and get it right for next year. So again, lesson learned.
So too. Yeah, I mean, I think they just need a couple more entrances, right? It's like you can go through the Princess, but it's hard. So you got one place, you're jamming 500,000 people through it. Just doesn't seem to be the best thing to do.
I think probably there needs to be a cap on Friday and Saturday attendance.
Yeah, totally.
If it was spaced out better throughout the week, it would probably...
Well, 100,000, 500,000, 100,000. Yeah, it gets a little tough.
Maybe we're selling too many tickets. Too much of a good thing.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Back to my comment on balance.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we could use a little bit there for sure.
Yeah.
Another topic that I'd love to chat with you about, because you are a small business owner.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about what's going on with the city and any initiatives or reach out to the small businesses that are such the lifeblood of everything that happens here.
It's a great question. And I should always prepare that one better because I always forget that you and I are going to talk about that. We work really closely with the Economic Development Department and also with Experience Scottsdale. And we're constantly working with our small businesses, trying to come up with ways, bringing people into our downtown, trying to get more foot traffic, trying to make sure that we have a great schedule of events and bringing people, bringing activities before our small businesses. Could we have more robust programs? From my point of view, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the hardest part for the small business owners that we talk to, and just to get this on record, like the city council has been amazing with Scottsdale Living and the Scottsdale Living Business Edition. You guys have always listened to us, been fantastic to help us and help businesses in any way we could. So we're internally grateful for that, right? I mean, I feel like there's maybe a little disconnect between big business and little businesses and pulling them together. So that would be something fun to figure out if you could,
I totally agree. I also think there's this weird as strange as it sounds, because we were just talking about how important business activity is to our community. There seems to be this idea that you're not a real resident if you're also a business owner in this community.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I'm a resident who also is a business owner.
Sure.
And there are, most of our business owners are in the city of Scottsdale are also residents. Yeah. So should my voice be discounted because I also run a business here?
Yeah, it's your livelihood and your home.
I think I should get extra points for being,
totally, right?
And we talked about support in the beginning. I have the support of a lot of residents and a lot of business owners as well.
Sure.
And sometimes that is leveled against me as a negative, and as if, again, a person who's working and contributing to the economy in our city doesn't make them a real resident.
Yeah.
That is so confusing to me. I don't know where that comes from, honestly. I'm so grateful for all the small businesses in this community. Yeah. And especially, again, being part of that community.
Yeah. And what's the number again? 18,000?
18,000 businesses in the city.
So, I mean, that's huge. That's such an impact. And those people live here, right? I mean, I'm one, you're one. So it's like, I feel you're 100% right. I mean, they need to be heard. And we need to take that in consideration too, because you can't stop business and growth and still have the people that make their livelihood here doing it,
Our city's getting older by the minute.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. We do have a very large 55 plus and 65 plus population here in the city of Scottsdale, and a lot of people are retired, and so they sort of
different
forget
objectives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's all about a balance. It's all about a mix.
Sure.
It's great that we have a good, robust retirement community, but we can't just be a 65 plus community.
Right. No, 100%. And I mean, with what's happening, it's like the writing's on the wall. It's becoming such a tech hub and I mean, there's so much money coming in with that and so many high paying jobs and so much opportunity that it'd be so horrible to miss out on that kind of stuff. It's great.
Exactly. We need young families.
Yep.
We need people to call Scottsdale their home and their place of work.
Sure.
And to contribute to the economy. And again, all the way down, we want a diversity of ages. We want a diversity of people. We want a diversity of housing.
Yeah.
We want different employers. That's what makes the city rich and successful and vibrant.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of our business corridors, which is Old Town, right? It's exciting. I mean, there's so much going on. I mean, like Caesars is going in. There's big hotels being built. I mean, there's some really cool stuff happening. How do you see kind of like the downtown area continuing to develop, and what's the plan there?
Downtown is the lifeblood of the city.
I know, it's great.
For sure. We, in our last council meeting, we just did some tweaks to the Old Town Scottsdale character area plan. So we're definitely trying to get that under control and be very clear about our vision moving forward. And again, I think it's all about balance.
Yep.
The interesting thing for me about downtown, and my overall vision for downtown, of course, is being a year-round destination for not just people who live here, but also tourists, and a place where you can go where there's lots of great programming and people and live, work, play. The interesting thing I've noticed about downtown is similar to what we first started talking about in terms of the city being long and people living in different neighborhoods and having slightly different objectives and feelings about the city. The downtown area is suffering a little bit, I noticed, from that same issue. There are different districts in our downtown.
Yeah.
We on the council and as a city need to be thinking about our downtown holistically.
Sure.
It's not about playing one district against another. And we get that a little bit. We're trying to make sure that we have enough parking in our downtown area so that every district thrives right now.
Sure.
We've got some money set aside in the 2019 bond program to put parking in where it's most needed.
Sure.
And the language of the bond actually says we're considering alternatives and studying the data to make sure that we provide it where it's needed.
Yeah, 100%.
We get folks who are very territorial about, we want it in this particular section.
Sure.
Not understanding that if we manage the parking demand as in the city as a whole, then it ends up freeing up spots for the other places, right? You can't pile it all in one place.
Right. It doesn't work. Yeah.
It's much better to do it throughout the entire city. The other thing to consider is people are getting very excited about, there's so many special events and you've upgraded the Scottsdale Stadium now. We're going to have this huge extra demand for parking right there. I was just doing the schedule last night for spring training. There are 6 in-town games in the afternoon between 1 and 5.
Oh, wow.
So that means 24 hours of the entire 365 days where you would have more people here for spring training games.
Yeah.
We can't build parking or anything for that.
24 hours. Yeah, it's crazy.
Right? And yet that's the continual thing we hear on council. Yep. It has to be for the spring training games.
Such a minimal impact though. Yeah. I mean, it's a big impact. Don't get me wrong.
Totally. Yeah, we want to make sure the entire downtown, the last 3 or 4 parking areas that we've put millions of dollars into have all been in that section of the city.
Sure.
So we have to be careful that we manage it all the way around.
100%.
And parking in our city is actually a daytime problem. It's not necessarily a nighttime problem.
Yeah, it seems like it, right? I mean, it for sure.
It's for the businesses. And then they empty out and then nighttime is a lot easier.
Nighttime's all over there in that corner.
Right. So it's about what hours, what days, what sections of the city.
Sure.
It's complex and we have to weigh all of that so that we use the tax dollars to the best possible benefit for all of the residents.
Sure. So it's always amazing to talk to you. As we wrap up, anything else that you want to share with us? And especially, give us all your info on your campaign. How do people get a hold of you? How do they sign up? How do they support you? What can they do?
Thank you so much for reminding me because my campaign team would absolutely kill me for not being a little bit self-serving. So yes, campaign is going fantastic. We are full speed ahead. I am so excited. You can reach me on all of my channels at Tammy Caputi. So we are on Facebook. We are on every possible social.
TikTok yet?
Say again?
TikTok?
I believe we're even starting to go out there. So I absolutely encourage people to go on my website. It's tammycaputi.com. You can email me, Tammy at tammycaputi.com. I definitely want to hear from you.
Sure.
Bring it on. The more, the better.
I love it.
You can donate. You can sign my petition and you can just reach out to me and tell me what your most important concerns are. I want to hear from everyone.
Yeah. And they need to get on your mailing list for your coffee things too, for sure.
We're going to keep doing those coffees and probably even ramp them up. I'm also considering cocktails with Caputi.
There we go. I love it.
People have said they work during the day.
It's a little bit of both, right?
Exactly. Going to catch people on the other side of the day. But
cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. We super appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Good? Yeah. And then that'll never be in the audio. The guy's jamming in the room next door.
Yeah, I didn't even hear that. That was fun.
Oh, yeah, right? I think we nailed everything.
You and I are good at this.
I know.